Welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Marco Accordo, and in front of me I've got a really fun collection of delicious snacks. And with these snacks, I'm going to talk to you about spinal health and, more importantly, teach you how not to blow it. Okay, so before snack time, let's talk about some anatomy, and particularly the anatomy of the spine. Okay, so this is our big overview of the spine. This individual is facing to the right of the screen, and we can see here that the spine has three curvatures. Now, these curvatures are extremely important. Number one, as force is applied to the spine, it provides an amazing shock-absorbing spring. Number two, it provides space for a lot of our vital organs with this thoracic or mid-back curvature. Now, these spines are super important. As we can maintain these curvatures in their alignment, our spine can stay strong, flexible, and really healthy. So let's take a look right here. So right here, what we're going to do is look at this close-up of these vertebrae. Now, as we look at these vertebrae here and this close-up, we can see that each of these vertebrae, and this individual is still facing the exact same way, each of these vertebrae is connected by your spinal discs. Super important. And amongst the spine right here, we can see our spinal cord. And importantly, each of our spinal nerves that go to innervate every single body part of our body, these nerves exit these little holes that are formed between each of the vertebrae and what we call the posterior elements of the vertebrae. Now, this structure is really important. It can flex, it can bend, it can move, it can twist, and it's extremely strong when it's very, very healthy. Now, let's take this individual, let's lie this person on their back, and we're going to take a slice through right here. And with that slice, we can see the disc. We can see the posterior elements of the vertebrae below it. And we can see the spinal cord right here going up and down that beautiful canal. And we can see that the nerve roots exit right through here. Now, I think it's snack time. So I've taken the kiwi and I've sliced it. The outside of the kiwi, in terms of our anatomical model, that's called the annulus fibrosus, and this is a very fibrous material that is amazing under stresses like tension. Now, in the middle there, we're going to take a dollop of non-dairy yogurt, just because I have a severe dairy allergy, so we don't do the dairy. And this dollop of yogurt, that right there is the middle jelly layer of the disc, which is called the nucleus pulposus. And this nucleus is amazing under compressive forces. Boom. So there we have it. We've got our little vertebrae, we've got our disc right here, and we've got our annulus fibrosus, which is this guy right around the edge, and we've got our nucleus pulposus right there in the middle. In a subluxated state, right? If we've got a misalignment or we've got improper biomechanics caused by subluxations, what ends up happening is we start to take damage on the disc. It was on the outside of the disc. And that damage is really dangerous because it causes the disc to weaken. It can't function as well as it needs to. But on top of that, there are no pain receptors out here. On these outer fibers, this damage goes completely unnoticed and completely asymptomatic. So you're not going to know that it's there. In fact, 80% of the population has bulging discs in their spine and have no idea whatsoever. So as this damage has occurred, a couple of things happen. Number one, what can end up happening is that these cuts and frays start getting into the middle fibers of the disc. And then what ends up happening is that this middle nucleus pulposus material is allowed to ooze now into the disc itself. Now that's a huge problem because this material right here was formed embryonically from your notochord, which actually forms before your immune system. So when this stuff starts oozing to the outside of these outer disc fibers and these inner disc fibers right here, your body does not recognize that as self. So it mounts a huge immune response and it mounts a huge healing response to try and, number one, clean that damage up. But on top of that, to try and protect the body from what it perceives as a foreign invader. This is a huge problem and can be very symptomatic. This can cause disc pain. Disc pain is awful for two distinct reasons. Number one, it feels nothing like you would expect it to feel. And number two, most of us do the exact wrong thing for our bodies when we do start to experience it. So what does it feel like? Well, number one, it can feel like just really deep aching, and sometimes that'll hit our low back. We can also feel that through the mid-back, and we can also feel it through the neck. And it feels like that deep aching, and then sometimes it can feel like muscular aching or muscular soreness, and it kind of prompts us to start stretching. And then what do? Well, we start trying to stretch. In the case of the low back, we're often tempted to start stretching in this direction. And that's double trouble for a couple of reasons that we're going to talk about in a few seconds. But the big thing is that we don't know what's going on. The other way that this can start to manifest itself is with radiating pain. And sometimes that pain is going to feel like soreness, sometimes it's going to feel like tightness. It mostly just feels like a deep ache. And we can sometimes feel that in our neck, and it can sometimes radiate and start causing headaches, pressure, just deep achiness. In the mid-back, it can feel like the same thing, but it can start wrapping around like the rib cage and start spreading, you know, between the little riblets. And in the low back, sometimes it'll even radiate like around the hip, and it'll even start going into like the groin, and it'll oftentimes feel like actually just hip pain and really nothing else. So let's talk about what happens if this whole phenomenon just keeps going. One very surefire way to know if any of this is going on in your body is if when you bear down or increase your abdominal pressure in any kind of a way, that stuff gets worse. For example, a sneeze, sitting on the toilet to go number 2, trying to lift something. Our spine stabilizes itself by squeezing itself together, and as we squeeze things, what ends up happening is this gets pushed closer together. And if this is really hurting your body, then you know that your discs are really in trouble. Here we can see that the natural curvature of the low back is a slightly extended position, and this structure creates a lot of strength and flexibility for the low back. If we start bending this forward on a spine that is unhealthy and needs healing and needs help, you'll see that we start pinching the front of the vertebrae, pinching the front of the disc, and that puts a lot of pressure in this rearward direction here. It starts putting pressure in this rearward direction here. And in the case of our snack model, when we start putting pressure in the front right here, what ends up happening is this. Uh-oh, now we've got a disc herniation. This is extremely painful because remember, your body does not recognize this itself, and it tries to heal it by mounting an incredibly intense immune response. The other major problem here is that this is right where those nerve roots want to exit. Right? So now we've got this disc material, we've got this nuclear material literally pinching on these spinal nerves. And that can start causing radiating pain and discomfort in a neurological type way. Radiating neurological symptoms are very different than radiating disc symptoms. Radiating neurological symptoms can feel like burning, it can feel like numbness, it can feel like tingling, it can feel like itch, it can feel like electrical shock and tingling, and those will usually follow the nerve roots. So for example, in the neck, it'll feel like it can be coming down into the upper back, shoulder, into the arm, elbow, into the forearm, into the hands, into the fingertips. And in terms of your legs, it can feel like it's going down the back of your leg, as an example, down the back of your leg through your butt, which is traditionally like that sciatica that you've probably heard about or maybe experienced yourself. And it can sometimes go down the front of your leg, it can go down the outside, it can go down the inside, and it can go all the way to your feet and toes. Because our discs don't have a blood supply of their own. It's actually nutrients from the vertebrae itself that diffuses across the end plate of that bone that actually nourishes the disc. So not only does it take a lot of time, but it also requires proper biomechanical movement for your discs to heal. The right chiropractic adjustments while your spine is healing realigns your vertebrae to give your discs the best chance of healing. And chiropractic adjustments also restore proper biomechanical movement to these joints so that your body has the opportunity to heal over time.